Hello and welcome to my first Exceed character overview video. This time, I'll be giving you the rundown on Red Horizon's Lightning Rider, Ulrik. Ulrik is an extremely mobile, opportunistic fighter. He is able to move around the board with ease and initiate strikes at distances that the rest of the cast can only dream of. His game plan revolves around combining damage-increasing boosts with highly consistent attacks in order to dispatch his opponents in a few decisive strikes. All of Ulrik's strengths come at the cost of several shortcomings, however. His best attacks require time to set them up, he's generally weak in close-range combat, and he's also quite vulnerable to pressure. Ulrik's starting ability allows him to close or retreat one space before he initiates his strike on his turn. After he exceeds, that movement doubles. Now, I believe this UA exists to mitigate two of Ulrik's weaknesses I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Those being his weakness at certain ranges and the extra turns he needs to set up boosted attacks. Ulrik's special moves, while powerful, can have some wonky ranges to them, so this movement can help him get into an optimal position to use them. It also makes it more difficult for opponents to be in their favorite ranges, as you can start your strike away from the range they spent their last turn achieving. The best thing about this UA, however, is how economically advantageous it is. Other characters that want to move and strike have to dedicate 2 turns to do so, whereas Ulrik only needs to spend 1. Given that he relies on applying continuous boosts to his strikes to play to his full potential, it's important that he is able to compress his turns in this way. I believe that Ulrik is one of a few Season 1 characters who does not want to reach his Exceed form as soon as possible. As we are about to see, several of Ulrik's specials benefit from him possessing Gauge at the time of their use, and he has 2 incredible Ultra Strikes as well, so the best course of action is generally to save your meter for these abilities. Also worth mentioning is that Ulrik's UA only takes place when he chooses to strike on his turn. His ability is effectively blank on the enemy's turn, another reason he can be weak to aggressive playstyles. A final warning. Note that his Exceed form says 2 spaces, not up to 2 spaces. Once he flips, he becomes unable to move only 1.
Ulrik Kick!
Lightning Javelin is a dive variant that trades in the normal's dodge effect for a blazing 6 speed and greater range viability. With that high speed and ignore armor, Lightning Javelin is a highly consistent strike that benefits from having plus power boosts applied to it. It's important to think before boosting and kicking all willy-nilly, however, as Ulrik will most likely advance himself into a corner after this hits, which is the absolute worst position for him to be in. Overcharge is a zero-force boost that allows Ulrik to turn his next strike into a hit-confirmable Ultra of sorts, letting him spend his Gauge to deal ridiculous damage. This has one of, if not the highest potential damage outputs of any of Ulrik's boosts, though it also has the steepest cost as well, so keep that in mind. Lightning Javelin is an excellent card that embodies both parts of Ulrik's kit. Its strike is consistent and its boost provides a future card with more damage. Which side of it you pick to use depends on your positioning, the other cards in your hand, and the matchup you find yourself in. Inevitability is another long-range strike that may have even more consistency than Lightning Javelin. Crazy? Yeah. It is a stun-immune, full-board close that ends with Ulrik's unblockable fist on his opponent's face 99% of the time. Just watch out for character-specific specials that counter the close, such as Mei Lian's Halberdier, and avoid using it up close, as its low speed makes it easily dived. Arc Impulse is a 2-force boost that makes Ulrik immune to attacks at range 1. While expensive, this eliminates one of Ulrik's greatest shortcomings, and closes off a great deal of options for your opponent. I tend to use Inevitability most often for its strike, given how easy it is to hit with, but I think its boost has a great deal of potential, and I encourage experimenting with it. For instance, think about how Arc Impulse might pair with another Inevitability or a Lightning Javelin. Ionization is a much-needed cross variant on Ulrik, allowing him to create the space that Inevitability and Lightning Javelin need in order to succeed. Note that at 4 speed, it is borderline only at its maximum range of 4, so unboosted, you'll want to try and use this move from as far away as you can, unless you are pretty certain your opponent wants to use something really slow. This means its retreat distance is often shorter in practice than it seems in theory. The boost Speed Force may cost a hefty 2 force, but its effect is incredible, allowing Ulrik to move to any space and granting him 2 extra speed on his next strike. Ionization certainly has its uses as a strike, creating space and evading defensive moves, but I find its boost just too good to pass up. It helps Ulrik escape from the corner without having to risk a strike, and often ends up being highly force efficient. Blitzhammer is a variation on Assault, sharing the normal speed and close 2 before trigger. While it does not give advantage, the hit trigger movement serves a multitude of purposes. It can move Ulrik past an opponent to escape the corner, get him out of range 1 to avoid retaliation from strikes like Focus, or get extra stats from your Ultra Boosts. Thunderous Might is a straight upgrade over Fierce, granting +3 power for 0 force. It's not as potent as some of Ulrik's other boosts, but it is his most consistent and cost-effective. Both sides of this card are strong and deserve to see a lot of use. Sure, Blitzhammer has only borderline speed and it's not as flashy as Ulrik's other specials, but using it means you can often save your assaults for their boost effect, a space creator that Ulrik certainly appreciates. 100 million bolts is the black sheep of Ulrik's special strikes, as it is range 1 only and does not contain any movement effects. This strike is meant to help against Ulrik's weakness to defensive strikes at range 1. In that regard, it serves a role most similar to Spike, despite its range, speed, and power all being very different from that normal. When hitting with this, remember that force is a precious resource. I only recommend spending for the hit trigger in 2 scenarios: if it gives enough power to stun an attack with armor, or if it would end the match. Charging power is yet another plus power continuous boost for Ulrik, giving your next hit extra damage equal to your current gauge. I suggest holding onto this card for its strike, as it provides coverage and versatility, but there's nothing wrong with using it as a boost if you are sitting on a wealth of gauge. Even so, that is a situation Ulrik rarely finds himself in. To best understand why, one needs to see his ultras and how powerful they are. Let's do that right now. Ulrik's first Ultra Strike is Second Strike. Anyway. At only 2 gauge, it's an upgraded assault with a staggering 8 speed and the ability to ignore armor. Many characters have similar single-range ultras they need to maneuver into, but Ulrik's UA makes setting this up child's play. You're not getting a lot of damage for your gauge if you leave it unboosted, so keep that in mind. Thunderclap is a 1-force, high-power boost that can do much more damage than it may appear to at first. To explain the effect in more detail, it gives Ulrik's next strike an additional power for each space he is able to move before damage is calculated. This card is great for pressuring opponents into striking on their next turn to prevent you from moving, but the joke's on them because Ulrik can move anyway. In Exceed, damage is calculated after all on-hit effects resolve. That means that the movement on Ionization, Lightning Javelin, and Blitzhammer will create power from Thunderclap. The Second Strike is a fantastic card that embodies Ulrik's 2 biggest traits, a highly consistent strike and a plus power boost. Just like Lightning Javelin, however you use this card is fine, as long as you successfully convert it into big damage. Atomic Bolt is an upgraded inevitability that doesn't need any boost to hit hard. It is my absolute go-to move for closing out matches. 3 cost for 8 damage is great, once you factor in how easy it is to hit with this. It lacks any defensive stats, so you'll want to use this from a considerable distance to avoid any shenanigans. You will most likely stun any unboosted strike played in response besides block, but take care its movement doesn't put you right in the corner without a way to get out. Static Charge is cut from the same cloth as Thunderclap, only it provides armor on movement rather than power. I value this boost significantly less, however, as Ulrik wants to stun or dodge opponents during boosted strikes. If you find yourself unable to escape retaliation, then the armor here can help you make a nice trade, but only do this if you feel you have no chance of hitting the strike. In this section, I'll talk briefly about how the normal cards synergize with the rest of Ulrik's kit and his general game plan. I think it's important to include this because normals make up more than half of a character's deck. I won't talk about how they work in general, as there are already great guides on that subject. The scouting or option elimination Ulrik gets by using parry is considerable. For normals, sweep is probably his most hated strike, and tech the most annoying boost. Even so, until you are confident with Ulrik under pressure, I suggest using block for its strike more often. It will help mitigate the damage from an aggressive opponent, and Ulrik appreciates the easy gauge. I find focus to be an integral strike for Ulrik, because it grants him much needed defensive stats, and a slow, armored move contrasts with the rest of his kit, helping him stay unpredictable. I feel his special attacks have enough consistency that he does not need to rely on reading to ping for damage as much as many of the rest of the cast. I'll still use focus for its boost when it gets me great value though, either by getting rid of a normal that will hard counter me, or to close out a match. Sweep's high power and effective range makes it a card that Ulrik, like everyone else, really wants to hit with. Light can be used to make his lower speed specials far more deadly, but make sure it is worth losing out on the potential 6 damage. You already have Ionization's boost for plus speed, though that does require a considerable force investment. Defend can protect Ulrik and allow him to trade if he is having trouble positioning. Making an Ionization more likely to hit is not only great for its damage, but also to get its retreat effect in order to set up for a huge boosted strike later. Ulrik has a lot of moves that ignore armor and guard, but none are viable at Spike's ranges. So keeping this for strikes can be a good way to punish opponents who think they can play sweep or focus outside of 100 million volts' range. Through the combination of his unique ability and preferred ranges, Ulrik finds himself in good positions to dive often. At the same time, however, he often has a special that is just as good, if not better than dive at dive range. I think tech is a great way to use dive. Ulrik is all about using his own boosts to power up his attacks, so boosting with dive is a way to deny opponents' attempts at counter boosting. Advantage is always nice, but several of Ulrik's specials are already excellent choices at range 3, including the very assault-like Blitz Hammer. Ulrik also doesn't like being at range 1 in most matchups, so closing in is generally not advised without either a good payoff or a guaranteed hit. I tend to use Assault for its boost for some very force-efficient retreating. Just as I generally use Assault to make Ulrik retreat, I do the same with Cross. Cross is pretty dominant at range 2, whereas Ulrik's specials are not, so I won't use Run unless I need to escape a corner. Grasp is always great. Ulrik likes the +2 power on his high consistency strikes, but most of his unique boosts are better at providing damage. I like to hold on to Grasp to protect myself at range 1. The hit trigger gives Ulrik some breathing room, and it has a high chance of landing inside your gauge. Lastly, being able to threaten with Grasp allows for a low-risk, low-reward mix-up with 100 million volts. Grasp is the only option many characters have to beat out a Volts on Ulrik's turn, but players will be loath to risk it on defense when there's a high chance it will get stuffed by your own Grasp. Thank you so much for watching my Ulrik deck guide. This is not only my first Exceed guide, but also my first ever recorded video, so I appreciate you bearing with me all the way to the end. If you have any comments or ideas about either Ulrik or my video quality or format, please share them with me in the comments. If you want to purchase Exceed for yourself and support the creators of this fine game, please head over to their website at level99games.com/shop for it and many other fantastic games. If you want to try Exceed for yourself before buying, you are in luck. Level 99 Games has made a print and play demo featuring 2 of its characters. The first is Ulrik himself, and the other is Lily, a gunslinging ranger who will be the subject of my next video. Until then, this is Wind Up Bird reminding you that there's 2 sides to every card, and remember, wild swinging is always an option.